Necromancer will finally be great again with the buffs that it's receiving in Season 6. No, we're not getting a movement ability, we're getting something better. The first most important thing, a new passive called Necrotic Fortitude. Your damage is up to a 5% chance to grant a barrier for 5% of your maximum life. That goes up to a 15% chance. All your damage, whatever you're dealing, whatever build you're playing, minions, blood surge, blasting, you are getting barrier for simply doing damage. Boom. Necro's survival problem out of the window. Finally, we're not a victim anymore. And especially our minions should be able to trigger this if they fix that minions can't lucky hit in Season 6. And we're also getting a new key passive, which is really interesting because it says enemies affected by vulnerable, crowd control, or shadow damage over time are infected with affliction and take 15% increased damage from you and your minions. Okay, step 1. But then your curse skills deal 2011 shadow damage to enemies that have affliction. This amount is increased by 30% of your damage to crowd control, vulnerable, and shadow damage over time combined. What does this mean? If we're using our Decrepify that we actually use in every single build, especially in the minion build, we're doing damage with it now. And if you think about the Golem build in Season 4, you were spamming Decrepify and Raise Skeleton, and that's kind of the only thing you did in that build. Only that your curse now finally does damage. And most importantly, your Golem can also now consume corpses. There's a new aspect coming, aspect of Fell Gluttony. Your Golem active also causes your Golem to erupt, so Golem does explosion plus explosion. And then your Golem consumes corpses to reduce its remaining cooldown by 1 second. Huh. So Golem consumes corpses to trigger Flesh Eater. Now there's also an incredible new ultimate, but we'll get to that in a second. Because first, the affliction again. If our curses are doing shadow damage now, right? It says your curse skills deal shadow damage. What about the Blood Moon breaches? They read, your minions' attacks have a chance to randomly inflict Decrepify or Iron Maiden. It's only a 7% chance, but with the attack speed that minions are having, this does happen quite often. And if your curse skills deal shadow damage now, this should deal the bonus shadow damage and scale multiplicative current damage bonus if we're attacking into crowd control, vulnerable, as we do anyways, and shadow damage over time. Fantastic. Especially with the new Paragon board that we're getting, the Frailty Paragon board, which is going to contain a lot of crowd controlled, vulnerable, and shadow damage over time nodes. And Frailty does another cool thing. Cursed enemies take 10% increased damage from you and your minions. This bonus is increased by 10 each second they're cursed, up to 40%. So minions are doing now 15% more damage because of affliction, 40% more because of frailty, 150% more because of the cult leader Paragon node. Hello, do we finally have a minion curse build happening? And while the whole thing happens while we're cursing, there's a lucky hit chance that we're actually triggering barrier to not be super squishy anymore. Necro's looking quite intriguing, I'd say. Oh, and while you're fortified, you deal also increased damage to elites / bosses. This is 6, 12, 18% bonus damage. And about that lucky hit up there, we're getting another passive that increases our lucky hit chance by 5, 10, 15%. Just like that. Fantastico. But not only do we have good things for curse builds, we also get a new ultimate. This ultimate is called Soul Rift. For 8 seconds, you corrupt surrounding enemies. There's an aura happening around you that travels with you, and every 0.25 seconds of this duration, you absorb the souls of up to 3 enemies, gaining 2 essence and barrier. It's an insane essence production machine that also does damage to everyone around you. Then every soul absorbs increase your damage up to 30%. So if this keeps on keeping on, if we manage to somehow get the cooldown reduced and have this running for quite some time, well, it runs 8 times already, 50 seconds cooldown, but we're increasing our damage for 30%, and enemies that get soul sucked are vulnerable. So we don't even need to play corpse tendrils anymore. That means you're blood misting around, walking around, creating barrier. Then this also should have a lucky hit chance to create barrier as well. So we're making barrier on top of barrier to make barrier. Yeah. And this has a a new unique. And that unique is actually crazy. It's called the Unmaker. First, 17.5 damage reduction while you have Barrier. Pair this together with Soulbrand, the chest that also gives us, you gain 30% damage reduction while you have a Barrier. Plus, even more damage reduction while you're healthy. Whew, okay, I'm like, we're there. Then, resource generation, cool. Soul Rift ranks, because ultimates can now have ranks. Imperfectly balanced, our core skills are hitting harder now. Then, Soul Rift's duration is increased by 0.5 seconds for every 30 essence you spend while it's active, up to 8 seconds. That means our Soul Rift itself is sucking souls out 8 seconds long and giving us essence, so we can spam Blight, for example. And then the actual duration will be increased up to 8 seconds. So that's a 16 seconds long with the helmet running. There's also Soul Rift tempers on our chest, pants, boots to increase the duration of Soul Rift. Because these are now utility tempers. And we only have to reduce the cooldown down to 16 seconds or 20 seconds. Plus, Soul Rift deals 200% of its shadow damage per second to surrounding enemies for every 30 essence you gain while it's active. So the more essence we gain, the more resource generation we have, the more souls we're sucking out, the more, right? The more essence generation we anyways pump, the more damage we deal. And if Necro can do one thing, it's essence regeneration. I mean, if I'm going for resource here right now, we could be playing the aspect of exposed flesh, where we're lucky hit. Yes, we boost lucky hit even more, produce essence to pulls out more damage. We could be eating blood orbs, but that's not really an option. Our shadow damage over time effects have a chance to generate 3 essence. Damage up from your shadow-like key passive will always generate 2 essence. What? Yeah. I mean, maybe this finally becomes good, because we have a shadow aura around us permanently, more or less. And then we're creating essence quite a lot with whatever we're doing to pull out more damage, while we're spamming Blight, essentially, because that's the thing. We're producing so much essence that we could just spam Blight out while we're standing in our... My Shadow Necro looking quite juicy. But not only Shadow Necro, also the Reaping Lotus. Sever no longer returns and instead splits into specters that expand out and back from its apex. Intriguing, but Sever deals another 120% of normal damage. Just like that, just 120% bonus damage increase. Why not? Could play a Sever build also with the shadow around you, with your Soul Rift going on while you're severing. And your Soul Rift is essentially just soaking you back up to never take damage. Or you're going for the new Bone Spirit with a phasing Poltergeist. When Bone Spirit explodes, it spawns 3 spirits that seek nearby enemies and deal 40% of its damage. This effect can only occur once per cast, so you're just spamming Bone Spirits with the Spirit Wave build or with the Bone Splinter spam build to make even more spirits going out. Now, another interesting part about the Unmaker, and in general the new ulti, is that we're also getting runes, right? Runes. And these runes have different triggers and effects. And one trigger, for example, would be spending maximum resource to get Offering. So 5% of your maximum resource. Let's say we're spamming Blight. And then that Offering is being returned into requires 200 Offering. Reduce your active ultimate cooldown by 4 seconds. So we're spamming away our Blight. We're using our ulti. We're reducing our ultimate cooldown. I mean, this seems to be working plenty well. And don't forget, there is already Blood Wave spamming builds that actually go crazy on Blood Waves, or even Army of the Dead. But you can finally now put 5 skill points into your ultimate skill. I have my Blood Wave cooldown reduced to 42.21 seconds. I could bring it down to 40, even 35 seconds, and then increase the levels of this skill to bring it to 9. Shaco, Harlequin Crest could increase levels even further. You could have the Blood Mist almost at 0 cooldown even without eating Blood Orbs. Oh, and did you know that the Blood Wave, instead of making 3 Blood Orbs per wave now, makes 6 Blood Orbs per wave? That's 18 Blood Orbs that you can consume for either Blood Lances, or that you could just walk over to cast more Lances, or again, consume to make the Bone Spirit go crazy as you play the Blood Artisan's Cuirass. So many builds that exist already just get so much better with the new systems. Another passive would be Finality. You deal 15% increased damage for 8 seconds after casting an ultimate skill. That would work perfectly well for the Blood Wave spamming build, also for having Soul Rift on very low cooldown, even Army of the Dead spamming with your minions. Just a 15% wholesale damage increase. fantastic. And our temper recipes changed because bone innovation is now utility temper. And utility temper can go on boots, gloves, amulet, pants, chest, helmet, shield. And the utility temper is now bone storm duration and bone spirit explosion size. Hello? Yes, that's utility now. Also, the Blood Surge Nova and the Bloodlines duration is utility too, plus the Blight size and Soul Rift duration. What? Yes, that is utility as well. So easy to actually get the new stuff to go even crazier. Now, Sever is having also Sever effect size and Skeletal Priest effect duration plus Reap effect duration is utility as well. Then we're talking about the new Paragon board, and the new Paragon board is actually getting shadow damage over time and shadow damage. Then max life, we get crowd control damage, which is important for the skill itself, vulnerable damage, and then even attack speed plus max life as a rare node. And this is 2.5% attack speed plus max life, so it's going to be 5% attack speed, as it doubles the effect when you actually meet the requirements. I would have wished for a rework on the Callan's Edict, but now you finally have something to actually play with minions. Because before it was always Shadow Blight. You gotta play Shadow Blight. If you play minions, Shadow Blight is what you're gonna put out, because Callan's Edict is useless. Now with the new Affliction key passive, I mean at least enemies affected by vulnerable or shadow damage over time just take 15% increased damage from me and my minions. That's already just straight up a 15% damage increase without us having to do anything. And then again, the Frailty Legendary node making our minions do 40% more damage. Just like that. We're getting our minions better than ever. And we ourselves are becoming more useful. The interesting question is, if my curse skills deal shadow damage now, can my decrepify? Which right now doesn't have a lucky hit chance. But if I spam this and it does damage, it should also trigger a lucky hit and then reduce my cooldown of Army of the Dead, the Golem cooldown, and make minion builds even more viable and effective. And I'm pretty sure some smarter minds than me, Macrobio Boy, will come up with amazing good builds here too, give us some nudges on what we can actually work with. I'm personally excited and looking forward to Necromancer and the things we have gotten. Obviously, I want way more reworks. I want even more things. I want to see changes to the Paragon even more. A lot of the nodes removed that are useless and some other stuff. That being said, what do you think? Are you excited for this? Are you looking forward to the Necromancer in Season 6? Or is it rather forget about this shitty class, we're playing Spiritborn now? If you want to know more about Season 6 now, with how the rune words exactly work, and also how the whole new progression system is, 2 videos that explain it all to you. Have a great, fantastic day.